let's kick it off by just chatting about, how do we know each other? How did we meet?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I was trying to think about when we first met, and I don't know if I could put my finger on when we very first met. I think... Oh, no, I could. Yes, we met on my porch at Arcosanti. I'd been living there for a couple of months, and Kevin Kelleher, who was my roommate at the time, had said, "Oh, you've got to meet this guy Nathan. He's running this really kick-ass, pizza place, and they're very like people-centric, people-driven business." And I was like, "That sounds awesome." And so you came to Arco one day for some reason.
Yeah, I think I came to visit Kevin probably.
Yeah, and he was like, "This is that guy." And so yeah, we met briefly there.
I remember that now. Yeah, out on that little like square porch, where right next to where like he was just inside living in that room right next to it. I think.
Yeah. And I still have your business card, I think, from that meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's tucked away somewhere. So yeah, we met there, and then I think we like probably saw each other intermittently, but then I think the next time I remember being like, "Oh, that's Nathan," was during Burning Man 2 years ago, when you ended up camping with the Avant Yard.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when we really dropped in a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And then I think after that, we started working together a little bit with us coming up to Form and then doing a wedding at Arcosanti.
Yeah, and then
with
you guys
Bros.
Came for the fall sale. Yeah, I think that was kind of like there's Nathan, and in my mind, you are Freak Brothers, which I know is not accurate. I know there's a lot of people that make it up, but
close enough,
Yeah.
Separate, but the same.
You're like the guy in the back rolling out the dough and like mixing the marinara, and you're like serving the pizza, but also like you're just all over the place.
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. These days, I don't make as much pizza as I used to. I went pretty hard for about 4 years, and then the last 2 years have been more of me really empowering other people to take hold of the operations of the business. Because I am actually not great at that long term. I'm not an operational guy. I learned how to do a lot of things well enough in order to grow the business, but I'm realizing that my greater strengths lie elsewhere, and that there's actually other people who are just as good, if not better than me, at actually like running the operations and making the pizzas. Like several of my guys are probably better pizza makers than me at this point, which is a very humbling thing to say. But, they put in the work, they put in the practice, they're doing it every day, which I did for, quite a few years. But now I'm really stepping up and figuring out how can I actually like grow a business and create a sustainable career path for people and expand and really just focus on what we're really great at and kind of manage the team and be more of like a coach and a guide and a mentor and someone who kind of puts all the pieces together and tries to make everybody's work day a little bit better by the different stuff that I do now. So it's kind of been a shift over time to making less pizzas, but ultimately being able to make a better impact on my team and on my company.
You were a maker of pizzas, and now you're a maker of people.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
A maker of pizza people.
Yes.
Saving the world. Can I make my Joe Rogan joke?
Please.
Yeah, so when Nathan said that we were doing this, I was like, oh. He was like, it's like Joe Rogan. I was like, you mean Dough Rogan. So you're like the dough, like, you've identified that, like, your skill set just lies in different areas, including your spin-off podcast and all kinds of things. I think that's really important. I think it's important to be able to know, this is what it was for a while, and now you as a business person and as a person who... I think that's something that I've always really liked about Freak Brothers, or at least what I understand about how you guys sort of operate what you do, is it's very, people focused. And I wish more businesses, thought that way, instead of thinking about their employees as these kind of like, turnkey, plug and play.
As like an expense line or something.
Yeah.
Weird like that, something dehumanizing like that.
Yeah, I've been having this thought recently about that, and like how focused we've become on like the customer experience, and that's like, it makes sense because like the customer drives the like revenue into the business, and obviously like on the most extreme end of that is like China right now, where you have like these delivery guys who like get dinged almost half their paycheck if someone complains about them. And these are like the only humans that are in this entire chain, and they're the ones that are kind of like, they're the last mile, and they're, you know, if like they're 2 minutes late running up a VIP package and that person calls to complain, like they'll get fined half their pay. And you know, I've been thinking about like the idea of businesses as like sort of a force for good in the world, and it seems like the two things at least need to be in balance, right? Like this care for the people who work for the business, because like what does a business do ultimately? It creates jobs, it gives people skills, and it provides a service. And I feel like we have, and maybe this is just my perception because I'm not a small business owner, but it feels like so many businesses are just focusing on that one sort of like part of that graph that like, you know, provides a service to something or to someone, and like missing out on this like kind of really fundamental part of like why you start a business in the first place. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So to kind of add to that, I totally resonate with what you're saying. I actually, not everybody knows this, but I actually didn't come from a restaurant background. I'd actually never worked a day in a restaurant in my life when I actually filed the LLC papers for Freak Brothers. It wasn't until after that I started working at Chipotle, and I worked there for about a year, learned all the positions there, and that kind of gave me my basic training in the restaurant industry. But, you know, I like to say that it was a happy accident that Freak Brothers even exists. I was kind of in between jobs at the time, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Had kind of been spending some time soul searching, and then my brother, who organizes these running races with Aravaipa, was like, "Hey, do you want to cook pizza on the weekends?" There's this guy who was a runner at some of our races, and he built these mobile wood-fired pizza ovens in his backyard, and he came and cooked pizzas at a couple of the races. And my brother was looking to buy one so that we could actually do it at all of his races, because the guy wasn't available for all the races. So he's like, "Hey, I'm going to get this pizza oven. He'll teach you how to make pizza. Come just make some pizzas with me on the weekends." I was like, "Sure, I have nothing better to do. Why not?" So I definitely didn't mean to get into the restaurant industry. And I actually had people tell me, like, don't get in the restaurant industry because it's so challenging and the margins can be so small. And there's just a lot of variables that make it very difficult to, you know, grow that business, especially as like your first time at it. But I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just never knew what that was going to be or what that was going to look like. I mean, I like pizza, but I didn't start it because I'm like passionate about pizza itself. You know, I didn't start it because I'm a chef or anything like that. I was never formally trained as a chef. I just kind of learned things along the way and picked things up from people who worked with me, or went and worked with like other festival food vendors, and experiences like that is what really helped me to kind of figure things out. But for me, from the start, what really drew me to the business and why I ultimately chose to continue growing it was the creative freedom that I had to design the business in every way that I wanted to, because a lot of work environments I had been before that with a few other odd jobs I had worked, it just seemed like the people were always put second or last. And that was really difficult for me because I'm a strong person, but I'm also a very sensitive man as well. And so I had a very tough time emotionally in some of the workplaces I had been before. And so I wanted to create a different kind of workplace so that people felt safe to come to work and they could enjoy what they're doing. Team members are looking out for each other rather than stepping on each other's toes, which is especially notorious in the restaurant industry. So my passion really came from the creativity side of things as well as the people side of things, you know, because I love people and I love different kinds of people, and I love seeing people grow and people from different backgrounds getting to know each other. And I have a bit of a knack for bringing different people together and creating an environment that they can really thrive in and learn about each other and get to know each other and work together and cooperate, even if we come from very different backgrounds. So yeah, definitely the people focus has always been a huge one for me. You know, the logic in my mind is, you know, how does a business even exist? Well, people created businesses. We even created the concept of a business. So without people, business itself wouldn't even exist. You know, that comes before the product, that comes before the profits. You know, people is number one for me always. If I'm sacrificing the human experience in some way, then I'm cutting corners and I don't have my priorities straight. You know, at the end of the day, I want to make the best pizza we possibly can, and we continue to get better at that. You know, at the end of the day, I want us to be a profitable company so we can pay our people well, so we can grow, so we can continue reinvesting that and improving things. But at the end of the day, neither of those exists without people. You don't have a product unless you have people to make it. And you don't have profits unless you have people to run the business and to do it efficiently. So yeah, definitely, I would love to see more businesses reprioritize what really matters and what's really important. And you know, a year like 2020, I think one of the silver linings is I think we're refocusing on like what's really important. You know, there's more time to really go internal and ask the hard questions. You know, why am I doing this? What is this all for? What's the point if we're toiling day after day after day, putting in, you know, a lot of work for what? You know?
I mean, the point is shareholders, Nathan. It's shareholders. That's the point.
You know, the sad thing is a lot of people would legitimately agree with that, which is a weird thing to me. Yeah,
When Freak Brothers goes public, which to be clear, I don't invest in anything right now, and I don't necessarily know what that would mean, but I'm running the line, and then your focus is me.
I mean, shareholders, I think, you know, when you get to that point, they're important, but it's like I think everything has to be in perspective. Everything has to be in balance, and that's really it. I'm not saying that the product's not important. Absolutely it is. That's what we're delivering to people. That's what they're buying is the best pizza that you can get, you know. And then profits are important too, because profits is an indicator that I'm running my business efficiently, that we have a unique offering, and that we can actually grow the business, you know. And if I have someone investing in me, you know, it took them a lot of time and work and effort to get that money to invest in me. I want to be a good steward of those resources and give them a return on their investment, but not at the sacrifice of the people and the experience that we're creating. If we lose that, then we've lost everything. So I'm not willing to sacrifice the potency of what we're creating and like the human element of what we're creating. If I ever get too disconnected from that, you know, that's the time that I need to reevaluate why I'm doing things and put things back into perspective.
Yeah. You're making me think of, I think is it Wilbur for integral theory? Are you familiar with integral theory?
Oh yeah. Ken Wilber?
Ken Wilber. Yeah.
A little bit familiar.
And that's how I always am with concepts like this. I do that thing that you're probably not supposed to do, where I like, you know, read the one pager on the concept and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go apply that to everything. I'm like a generalist that way, I think, which is, you know, I like being a generalist. And what you're making me think of is like one of the interesting things maybe about humans and like human endeavors is we only have so much. You know, you, Nathan, and me, Tim, only have so much time and attention. Like, you know, they say time is money, which is like such a shitty saying. It's just like, God, like, no, like that's not time is time. But it does in the system that we operate within, you know, kind of like we live in a capital driven system where, you know, you could make the argument that even if time isn't money in the average person's life, the time they spent is representative of the money they earn, you know? And so what you're making me think of is that because we're only able to focus on like a couple of things at a time, you know, so many businesses just kind of choose that one sort of like most obvious thing to focus on, which is the product. And what a really good business should probably be doing is like using kind of like an integral theory model to look at how do each individual, you know, how is a business not just one single thing it does, but like the sum of the whole, you know, or the sum of its parts. And how do you make sure that you're investing as much time and energy into your people, into your product, into what you're, you know, into all these different aspects of a business, because the product oftentimes is like, it's like the tip of the iceberg. It's like the 10% that the people who are like paying you to do something see. So like, how do you manage to, and I guess I'm curious specifically, like, because I've heard you talk about a lot of this stuff, but what is it that Freak Brothers does different for their people? Like, what are the things you can point to where you're like, oh yeah, we're different than Pizza Hut here, other than your pizzas, obviously, you know, way better.
Yeah. I think it really all comes down to how much I invest into my people. And by invest, I mean time, attention, energy, mentorship. My 2 goals with my business, if I had to whittle it down, would be 1, to make people's lives better. I think it's kind of the ultimate, which could mean my customers, could mean my staff, could mean the partners that we work with, different local bakers, or even the Churchill and the people who run that. It's like, I want to make people's days and lives better. And that's really our goal. That's our focus. But it's not at sacrifice of, if we're making someone else's life worse in order to make someone else's better, then to me, that's like coming from a scarcity model of energy, of just how things can work. For me, I believe in a way that all pieces can be supportive of each other. And I really spend time with my people. I want to see them grow. Freak Brothers, we're a pizza company, but even deeper than that, we're almost like a personal transformation company is more how I like to look at it. And I think that's really what makes us different. At the end of the day, Pizza Hut is trying to make pizzas and they're trying to make profits, right?
Pizza was the first thing that came to mind, but yeah.
No, I mean it's a good example. It's
any company,
common chain, successful business by most people's standards. But what's different about us is I want to see people's lives be transformed. I want to get to know my people and who they are and what is unique about them and what is awesome about them, and how can I help to cultivate those qualities I see in them, just as certain people have done for me in my life. They saw something in me that I couldn't see fully in myself at the time, and they helped to cultivate those qualities in me so that I could more embody those and self-realize that, the different aspects of me that they saw in me that were brilliant or unique or different. And they really helped to mentor me and bring me up. Actually, my general manager of my shop now, Eric, I actually met him working at Chipotle. I worked underneath him. He was the assistant general manager at the time, and I learned a lot from him. And we got along, we became friends, and we're just like, this dude's weird, but I like him. And he taught me a lot of things. I taught him a couple of things, and then we kind of stayed connected over the years. And then by the time it was getting ready to open my shop, I was like, hey, I'm looking for someone to train to become a GM at my shop. Would you be interested? And so we have a really cool relationship of just deep mutual respect for each other. And we're really just trying to help elevate each other and make each other's lives better. He puts in a lot of work for the company and for me. But I do everything I can to invest in him and help his life to get better in whatever ways that I can and go the extra mile. So I think that's really what sets us apart, and what I hope to see, more and more businesses do. I think the best businesses do that. They understand that we're not just here to make a profit or make a product. We're here to improve someone's life in a substantial way. And I think if that remains the focus, then the other pieces over time will fall in place.
Yeah. Do you think that that's scalable, or because that's another thing that I've been really interested in lately is, businesses and this Western dominant way of thinking about business is something that must continue to grow at all costs. And I think I heard there was a holistic economist talking about this, and she said, we have a name for that in nature. It's called cancer. Something that just continues to grow and grow and grow unchecked, and eventually, obviously damages, everything it touches. And I think you could make a lot of arguments for what some of these businesses do, right, in terms of providing work for sometimes hundreds of thousands of people in a single business. But I don't think it would be that hard to make the argument that maybe a smaller, a grouping of smaller businesses that were more people focused would not just be providing work, they'd also be providing the things you're talking about, mentorship and fellowship and the things that, you really look for, I think. And I think that's something that I worked in the restaurant industry for a decade. And when you worked in the right restaurant, it was the ability to go to work every day and look forward to working with the people you were working with, and then go out after work and grab a beer together, and then hang out on the weekends. I think of restaurants as in America, where we don't have commons. spaces the way that you do in Europe, and like free, like spaces where it's just free form hangout spaces. Like restaurants are kind of like our commons, you know, and it's unfortunate that that's the case in some ways, because there's like a barrier to entry for, you know, people who are who don't have the money to spend on a nice restaurant and who are like locked into, you know, their McDonald's experience or whatever it is. But, you know, there is like this really wonderful service that it provides. And so, yeah, restaurants kind of are like these communal spaces that are, I think, play such an important role in our culture. And in a really good restaurant, there's kind of like this, I've found anyway, like this kind of like blurring of the boundaries between like the people who work there and the people who eat there, and like, you know, it kind of becomes its own self-generating thing. And so the boundaries in terms of the community and culture. So I'm curious, like, do you imagine Freak Brothers model scaling, or do you feel like there's kind of like a cap that you're looking for, where you're like, all right, we're good, this is what we do, and we're just going to keep doing it until we're not doing it anymore? Or is it like Freak Brothers total global domination in the next 30 years?
Maybe somewhere in between. Yeah. No, great question. I would say
because
that
you're not at a certain point, you're not going to be able to mentor every single person in your company. You know, it's just not going to be possible.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes, I do believe it is scalable, and I am moving in that direction. I think that in order to authentically scale it, the right pacing is needed, and the right amount of awareness is needed, and the right ability to teach people to become teachers themselves. So that's what I've done with Eric, especially, is he now is essentially in charge of the culture and all of the guys on the team, and he's the one who mentors and coaches them for the most part, like on the day-to-day. You know, I'll do check-ins and I'll drop in here and there, but, you know, I have taught him enough and mentored him enough that he now has the skills and ability to continue that process. You know, maybe he doesn't do it exactly like me, and maybe, you know, the first time go around he only does it, you know, 70% is good or something, but it's like he'll keep getting better, and he enjoys that as well. And so I think that is part of the scalable solution, is you have to teach other people to be good at mentoring and coaching people. I think the other thing, like I said, is just pacing. You know, right now we have one permanent shop. We technically have 3 mobile ovens right now. It took us 6 years to get there. I do have a goal in the next year to open another physical location. But, you know, I'm not trying to open 10 at once. You know, at least I didn't start my business in like Silicon Valley or anything like that. I didn't have any investors. You know, my brother provided, you know, pretty much almost all of the finances to get the business off the ground. You know, we really built it from scratch. You know, at some point, yeah, maybe we'll take on investors, but it would have to be the right kind, and they would have to really understand what it is that I'm doing. You know, I've always said that if I have one shop, but we show up with the right vibe and we're really doing things how I envision we can be doing them, and it feels how I want it to feel, we're already successful. We've already done our job. We're already making an impact. I don't need 2, 3, 10 locations, 100 locations to do that. So on the one hand, I'm okay with slow growth if it means not losing the potency of what we're creating, and actually even further, like, I want to keep increasing the potency of what we're doing. I think most businesses that scale, oftentimes, you know, they lose some of that early on, like special, unique energy that they had. You know, not that that's always a bad thing. I think businesses need to grow, and they're going to grow and evolve and change. It's not going to always stay the same. But for me, I want to always stay connected to like the core of like, why am I doing this? And how can I continue to increase the potency of what we're creating, and really care about the actual human beings who are working with me. I think that's the key to scaling it authentically, is staying connected to like, wow, like I really want to see Jacob succeed in his life in every way. I really want to see Gabe grow more and more into his potential and help to create a career path so that he can continue working with us and also pursue his other passions of DJing or, you know, whatever it might be. You know, my goal is to, for every worker, every person who works for me, for them to be able to create their ideal life and their optimal work-life balance, if you will. I kind of hate that term because it's a little overplayed, but yeah, like I love what you said earlier about sometimes the lines kind of blur in a really good restaurant, you know, and we're very clear about our boundaries. You know, when something is work, like we need to take it seriously, and we take very seriously like the quality of the work that we do, and we're, you know, we want to call each other up to do a high quality job every time and to keep getting better. But on the other hand, it's like we're also friends, and we also like to joke around, and it gets personal sometimes. But it's all about, I think, knowing when is the right time to show up in those different spaces, and to not have too many crossed wires, to really know when it's time to get down to work and when it's time to like relax and hang out, and to kind of know the difference between those two, which it's something you learn over time. But I feel like that's something we're getting really good at, is figuring out how do we show up and really do a high quality job when we're showing up to our craft, but then also keep that very personal experience so it doesn't feel anything other than like, wow, I get to show up and work with my friends every day. Like that's really the goal. It's not always easy, and we've ran into quite a bit of conflict trying to figure that out. But I'd say over time we have gotten a lot better at that, and things are running smoother than they ever have before.
That's great.
So yeah, in our mobile business, we're actually pivoting that right now to become primarily a wedding caterer, because I realize that's something we do really, really good at, and we have a very unique offering. So we're actually saying no to most events now, because I want to really focus where we can make the highest impact. And I think ultimately that's going to help us become better known for that thing, do a better job, and help to grow the business, and, you know, save up some resources so that we can grow and expand when we want to. But I'm not in a rush, you know. I want to take each day as it comes. I want to take each catering that we do as it comes and do the best job we can, and really just wow our clients, and just create a phenomenal experience for them. And if we're focused on that, I have no doubts in my mind that we'll continue to find the resources and support in order to keep growing the thing if people think we're doing something meaningful. And I think at the end of the day, that's kind of how I judge the potency of things, is like, what is the feedback we're getting from people? You know, do they really care about what we're doing? Do they really see it? Otherwise, are we really doing anything different? But more and more we do get that feedback that we're doing a phenomenal job, we're doing something really special, and you know, that really fuels us and helps us to like grow and just keep going.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, businesses that do have a sort of a, what's the word I want to use here? Like it's almost like there's a, like a mission, but mission isn't, I guess mission is close enough. But businesses that are like actually, I went through this whole like kind of like anti-capitalism phase, which, you know, I think anyone who has looked around at America and the state that it's in is like, I feel like it would be hard not to feel that way sometimes. And then I kind of rebalanced with, you know, this idea that, okay, like this is the system that we have. You know, how do we leverage, for now, you know, how do we leverage the system that we have while continuing to work to make it more equitable and more sustainable? And, you know, how do you really work within the system to like marry all those things together? And I feel like, you know, sometimes the only way you can do it is by creating an example for others for what that could look like. Because I don't think all business owners are like evil. I don't even think like most, you know, people who like run these kind of like dominant Fortune 500 companies think of themselves, they all think they're doing the, you know, good work for the world. And, or at least you have to hope they do, you know, it's like, otherwise how do some of these people sleep at night? But I think that there's a lot of businesses that just have blind spots, like we all do. You know, I've gotten really into worker-owned cooperatives lately, and that's a really compelling model for small businesses in America, I think. And there's just so many examples of really good worker-owned cooperatives out there that like actually do all the things we're trying to say we do with businesses, like empower people, you know, create a spirit of ownership in the business, like orient towards people. And that's not to say any like ethical business needs to be a worker-owned cooperative, But like there's things that you could learn from that model, and like I feel like it's just often that business owners or they just maybe don't even have the time or energy to figure out how to do it differently. So they're just following the model that they see. And so it's almost like people who are doing like the work you're doing as an entrepreneur, and it blows my mind that you're 2 years younger than me, and this is what you've been doing now for 5 years.
Over 6 years now. For the business. Yeah,
it's amazing, and it's almost like you kind of have this like moral imperative to like keep doing it and to grow it at least somewhat, because it's really important that there are examples of businesses that think about things this way out there, and like that those businesses are able to like get their message into the world in a way that like other people can really see and hear and understand it. So like kudos to you, man. It's crazy cool.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Yeah, definitely want to be a model for those who can see and those who are inspired by it. I hope that we continue to become more of that, and it is something I'm really passionate about, and I think we would benefit from more purpose-driven businesses, and also business owners who are willing to evolve and transform how they do business, because I think sticking to the status quo is just not really working anymore. I think it got us to where we're at, and I no judgment to how anyone runs their business. I'm sure they're doing the best they can with the context that they're within, with the perspective that they show up with, whoever taught them and mentored them how this is how business is done. Everybody learns a little bit different rules and priorities on what's important and how to do things. So I don't really fault anyone. I think there's just more opportunity available, and like you said, there's blind spots. There's just areas that we don't realize we could be better at because maybe we haven't had a good model of that. And I think it also comes down to like the business owner himself or herself. And that's like the biggest limiting factor of a business. Oftentimes I'm starting to get more into some business coaching, and I've worked with a number of small business owners now, and you look at any problem in a business, right? Like, issues with the product or the consistency or the staff or whatever it is, and I can always trace it back to there's some way that the business owner needs to grow. And when they grow in a specific way, all of a sudden now they have the answers on how to solve those issues. Yeah, because they can see it now. But I've come up against this myself countless times. Or they
don't have the answer, and they're finally able to acknowledge that and like put someone into a position who will have the answer for them, and learn to delegate that, and like
And 100%. And that's kind of part of, I guess, what I was encompassing the answer. And the answer might be, I need to get someone else to help me with this. I need to ask for more support because I don't know how to do this thing very well. I actually just made an investment recently. I hired a business advisor for the first time. Someone for myself and for the business. So it's someone who's already grown, their business to 5 to 10 times the amount of revenue that we're bringing in per year. So they're already a few steps ahead of me. And I also am not very good at financials and numbers. Like, if you give me the numbers, I can make good decisions. I like data. I like numbers. I like knowing what's going on, but I'm not the one to manage that or to figure all of that out. I get very distracted very quickly because it's just not my natural forte. So now I have someone who is walking me through our books and our numbers and everything and evaluating things so that I can make smarter decisions as a business owner in areas that I was lacking. So I had to humble myself enough to not keep struggling trying to figure this thing out that I'm not good at and will probably never be great at, and ask for the support I needed so I can show up and make better decisions in the areas that I need to make decisions in. So I think that's one big challenge when you move from like a true like small business solopreneur to trying to grow it to the next level is most business owners don't know how to ask for help. They're too afraid to. They have too much pride, whatever it is. They don't feel like they don't have the money or the resources, which not everything costs. Like there's plenty of free mentorship if you just watch YouTube or, just go connect with different people. But also I think it is worthwhile to, at some point, invest in support, invest in someone else helping you who's been there and done that, because the return on the investment is so much greater. It's like some of the things I've went over with my business advisor have totally transformed our business, and I'm convinced that we've already made a return on our investment, and I'm only, a month or two in out of a 6-month commitment, and the different decisions I'm making now is sending our business in a whole new direction, and we're easily going to make back the investment that I'm putting into that each month. So I think there's like kind of this mindset switch where you realize you can't do it all. At first you have to, but then at some point you have to grow beyond that and realize that you need other people to help, and you need to keep growing yourself and then bring other people in to support. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but I think that's the other reason why I wanted to be a model of like, hey, like I've been there, I've done that. I've had to evolve the business and evolve myself personally so many times in order for the business to keep growing. And at the end of the day, that's not even a business owner issue. I think that's just a people thing, a human thing of like, I think we all hit our plateaus, and because we have this identity of who we are and who we can be. But there's always more. There's always more available. And, that's, to me, that's one of the sweetest things in life is that like, I get to change. I get to grow. I get to evolve myself. I don't have to be the same person I was a year ago or 5 years ago or when I was growing up. I can grow beyond that. And that's, I think, one of the beauties of being human, and something that I try to instill within, the people that I interact with is like, hey, you always have an opportunity to better yourself, better your situation, and, grow in significant ways so that you can get more of what you want.
Yeah, well, it's a comfort zone thing, right? Like, and it is a human thing, I think, and I think it's actually particularly like an American thing, and I think that part of that is we have this like expectation for comfort that we just like no one ever promised us, and it's where I run into like real issues with kind of like I don't want to offend any of your listeners, but I'll say like the woo woo crowd is like this like inhuman obsession with the idea that like there is a perfect path out there, and if you are just like covered in enough crystals and like praying in Sedona enough, like you will have it all. Like it, like abundance mindset for me, actually I think about that as a privileged mindset, or as a privileged concept. And I recognize the value in thinking about things not from a scarcity mindset, but I think to go the polar opposite direction, this abundance mindset is a like distinctly privileged idea, and only kind of has emerged out of this Western culture that we exist in which we have an abundance mindset. Like you can just walk down the store and buy anything you need, or you can have that mindset here, but like that's not the reality for 90% of the world, and so for me, I think that, and actually maybe that's, I was a long distance runner for a long time, and like long distance running is, it's a deeply uncomfortable experience. I don't know any runners who are just like, that like 100-mile race I just did, so comfortable the whole run, you are going through this, it's very meditative in the sense that like meditation is a constant practice of like coming back to yourself and coming back to present awareness. Like running is kind of like that at certain distances where it's like you just don't want to do it anymore, but you have to keep doing it, And I think those experiences, and you and I have both run the Burning Man ultra marathon, which is such a crazy place to like decide to run an ultra marathon, but
so wild.
I would never take it back. And what it does, I think, is you're like pushing at the edge of your comfort zone and you're slowly expanding it out. And when you put yourself intentionally in places of discomfort, you are creating a more resilient, framework for yourself to work within. Because each time you do that, you're pushing it a little further and a little further. And I think what ends up happening for like business owners and all kinds of people, of course, is we just, we want the house and, the cool tech and the television that like just does the Netflix thing all the time and the, whatever, insert American dream as it exists today here. And I think that's fine. I'm not going to try to judge anyone for what they want. But I do think that I'm more drawn to people who push at the boundaries a little bit and who put themselves in intentionally uncomfortable spaces as often as possible. And I find that I have an easier time identifying with those people and really resonating with them.
Yeah.
And So yeah, that's I guess so that's kind of a tangent on what you were just saying, but I think it gets to like the why. Like why do we have all these kind of like uninnovative models for doing things, and why do people just kind of at a certain point say, okay, well I'm comfortable now, and like that's what we're gonna do. And I don't think there's like one way or the other is any more right, but like having just like intentionally lived at Arcosanti for 3 years, like I'm definitely a lot more drawn to like being in uncomfortable, challenging spaces, you know? So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm the same way. I've kind of oscillated back and forth between kind of on the one extreme, just like work hard, gut it out, grit, grind, like just, do whatever it takes to exhaustion. And
which also is not healthy.
No, it's
because
not.
then like forget your blind spots. Like you're just not even, you're just blind at that point.
It's not sustainable, and all that hard work and effort starts becoming inefficient because you're not taking a chance to step back and to see a better way to doing things rather than just banging your head against the wall a bit more. And then there's the other opposite mindset, which I've, got pretty deep in some spiritual communities too. And, of like, oh, just everything's in flow. Everything's perfect. Like it's abundance. It's all just happening. Like, which there's some value there too, but taken to an extreme, it can really not be an optimal way of living. You're now ignoring certain realities of your situation, and oftentimes when one gets too far in that mindset, now you're ignoring, you're kind of brushing over things, and you're not actually addressing the real things that are happening.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not necessarily suboptimal because there is no optimal, right?
I think there is, though.
I disagree.
I think there's a more optimal.
I think that there is I think that the idea of optimal is wildly individual, right? And so each individual kind of gets to pursue their own version of optimal experience. For me. I think what you're talking about is for me, it's like bypassing. Like to like get to this like idea of flow. Like you as a business owner, you've earned your feelings of, flow when you have them in the like technical definition of that word. There's a wonderful book about flow called Flow, if you've ever read it. And what he points out in that book is like, we've got the wrong definition of flow. Like flow is not, you're just going with the flow. Flow is that on this graph of things that you can do and things that are challenging, like they have to be like something that you can do and is also meeting you at an optimal level of challenge is going to feel good to you. But as soon as you're better at that thing than it is challenging for you, it's going to feel less good. Or as soon as it's more challenging for you than the level that you're at, it's not going to feel good. And so a flow state is actually a work state, and that's, what elite athletes, talk about, and artists and musicians, when they get into flow states, it's not like they're like tooling around and like just going with the flow. It's like, no, like you're working at what you have trained yourself to do at a, incredibly elite level. Yeah. And constantly challenging yourself and then rising to meet that challenge. And that's the progression of a flow state. And I've always liked that. And I feel like this like attempt to like, not to make a joke here, but like take ayahuasca and like go and like be in a, like, okay, I did it now. Like it's like this bypassing of what is like, a lifetime of work in order to feel something, feel something like you've done something meaningful with your life. And I say that having never taken ayahuasca. But I guess what I'm getting at is I know enough people who are like, or I feel like I attempt to kind of like bypass that work through, all these various kind of like outlets that we have in our world. And the only way I think to get there is just to work really hard, which is what you guys have done,
Yeah. Yeah, I would say working really hard is a very important piece of it. And I think that it's not something that ever ends. And I would also say doing the right work is equally as important. And that's a trap I've gotten caught in, is just I wasn't doing the right work and I actually wasn't playing up my edge. I might have been grinding harder, but I actually wasn't seeing where my next edge was at. And that's kind of what I do in my business now, is like continually identify where is my edge and how can I make the most impact. I've never had the idea that I'm going to get to a certain point and stock enough money in a bank account that I can just chill and relax. Like that sounds boring. Like, why would I want to do that? Like retire early and just go sit on a beach. Like, that sounds awful. I would not want to do that. Like, I enjoy creating. I enjoy growing. I enjoy doing things. But I want to be doing the right things that, like you were saying, in that optimal flow state where, it's the right level of challenge for the right level of skill set that I have. And it's this beautiful, like, marriage of the two, and like finding out what those are. Like, it evolves, right? Like you said, you might get so good at something that now it's no longer a challenge. I've gotten caught in that, where I've hit plateaus where I did get a little complacent or comfortable, at least for a short period of time, till I identified like what the next thing was for me. I think a big issue that I've had to overcome is identifying when that's happening and making a change, making a shift, rather than, even if it was a mindset that worked for me and I operated from for several years, maybe that mindset is obsolete and there's something else now. Like, there's a different way I need to show up to actually get in that flow state and play at my edge. And that's something that takes constant work, even just to identify and become aware of how you're growing and how you're evolving, and making sure you're kind of in that more optimal zone. Definitely, I think people are individual in kind of how they find that and what's optimal for certain people. I think people are built differently. But
absolutely,
at the end of the day, I think we all more or less want to get to a similar kind of state in our own unique way, of like in that flow state where, we are optimally challenged. It's not too hard, not too easy. And we do have the level of skill set, or at least the mentorship and help and support we need to get better at those things that maybe we're not as good at, so that we can like continue to grow. And that's really my goal. Is I don't ever want to, I see a lot of businesses, it's almost like they just stop at some point. They just stop growing, and now they're just like doing the same thing. Maybe they add more locations, maybe they do whatever it is, but they stop evolving. And I think ultimately because whoever's running the business has stopped evolving, and they said, this is good enough. I have done so much, I've reached a certain point, I'm very happy with that, and now I'm just going to kind of chill and let the money keep running in, or whatever it is. And but for me, I never want to do that. I want to keep growing and evolving and seeing, how can I keep things exciting? How can I keep things fun? And how can I continue to play at my edge, and not just get complacent? So I think the more businesses that do that, I think it will inspire more innovation and different ways of doing things. And, I think at some point, if you stop growing, you're not even utilizing your resources. You're not a good steward of your resources anymore, because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. You're not growing. You're not adding anything unique. You're not adding anything extra.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's, I think it's actually, well, one of the things that came to mind is it's like they like stop evolving and also maybe stop caring. It's like you know when you walk into a business and you feel like someone doesn't care. And it can be a small business, it can be a big business. Like, it doesn't matter. You just have that feeling, like someone just doesn't care, And probably most people don't care, because like if the person who's like leading the business, or the people, or like if they're not feeling engaged, there's no way their employees are going to feel engaged. Like, why would they want to, one of the I think a lot in like dichotomy, like one side of the spectrum versus the other side of the spectrum. One of the things that you are making me think of when you say that is I read this article the other day about like a 900-year-old mochi ball. It's mochi balls and green tea in Kyoto, Japan. A 900-year-old store. Because Japan has like they have the longest running businesses, I think, in the world. Like some of these businesses, they've got the highest, like per business, like they have a much more longevity than any other country in the world. And so yeah, like this green tea and mochi shop in Kyoto that literally for 900 years has been in the same family, serving the same one type of tea and the same one type of mochi. And but like, and they don't want to grow or evolve. That's what they do, and they do it well, and it has fed their family and provided an income for more generations than most of us can count back. And they admit it's a humble little operation. They don't make a ton of money. They cover their overhead, and they pay for their their like little life that they have there. but they care, they care about what they do. They show up at work every day and they make the best, smoked green tea you're going to get in all of Kyoto and the best little mochi balls. And so people show up for it, again and again. And so, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that as like what if that was more of like a key performance indicator rather than some of the other things we measure? Like how much do we care? How much does this business really care?
Yeah. Like what if you measured your employees, and like ask them honestly, like and like do it annually, like return, like how much do you care about what you do, And if that answer, starts to dip, that tells you that there's a problem and that needs to be addressed. Because there's just nothing worse than like spending money somewhere where people don't care. Like, I worked hard for this money, I don't get paid that much.
Yeah. And I think hand in hand with that is like, how does working in this business make you feel? That's been one of my KPIs since the early days is how does someone feel after they finish a shift versus when they started it? And hopefully most of the time it's better, even if they're a little more physically tired because they were on their feet for 8 hours. Hopefully, if I'm doing my job right in creating the type of work environment I want for my employees, they're going to feel better, emotionally, spiritually, socially, whatever it is, maybe physically a little bit more tired. But, if people are consistently feeling better after they go to work, now I've done something meaningful, because we spend how much hours a day at work? That's really where I see a big opportunity for impact is
50,000 over the course of someone's life.
Wow.
I was listening to a podcast about that the other day and like ways to invest your time and energy to make a meaningful impact in the world. And they were talking about 50,000.
That's a lot. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of our waking hours. And that's really my, what's the word for it? Kind of my experiment, I guess, is how can I create an amazing work experience so that people feel satisfied by the time that they spend, even in a business that's usually, closer to minimum wage, and is, hard work. It's honest work, an honest day's work. How can I make people feel great about showing up to work and then have enough energy to actually go do other things rather than just go home and crash? That's really my goal. And consistently the feedback we get is that people who work with us have the energy and the time to go do other things in their life too. Because as much as I want them to care about the business and be excited to be there, I also know that's not the whole of them. They have other parts of them that are also important. They have people in their lives they want to spend time with. They have other hobbies or passions they want to grow. A lot of the people who work with us are artists or musicians or have their own, little side business themselves. We really encourage that, and I take the lead. I'm very multi-passionate. Freak Brothers is definitely a huge part of my life, and there's a lot of other things I do as well. And, if I'm going to make that time for myself, then I'm going to do the best that I can to give my employees the freedom to do that for themselves as well. Ultimately the goal is how do we all create more fulfilled lives? So we're going to be here anyways on this earth. If we're going to be in this body on this earth, what can I do to create a more enjoyable experience so that I don't just spend my life working for 30, 40, 50 years and at the end be like, did I even enjoy it? Like, was that even fun? Not that hard work and struggle isn't even, worth it from time to time. But it's like, how do I find kind of that right balance or harmony of like all the aspects of my life, and how do I keep improving that? So I think that's really another one of my goals on what can we model is like, how do we harmonize with the rest of what matters to us, the rest of what's important to us? I think if more business owners are able to think in that way, I think we can create, a much better overall work environment than, like you're saying, the bit of a cancerous work environment that we typically see, especially here in America.
Yeah. Well, and what, fulfillment and what everyone feels fulfilled by, it's so varied based on from person to person. So like a life that is fulfilling, it's defined by the individual. And so for you, you want your life to feel fulfilling by doing the things that you're, attempting to do or are doing right now. Whereas someone else, might feel fulfillment, again, making mochi and serving tea. But I like the idea of how your employees feel after their shift, and how they how they feel about the rest of their life, because it is a huge amount of time you spend, at work in our culture. And 50,000 hours, one of the ways that I've been thinking about it is, it's like and maybe this is a scarcity way of thinking about it, but it, lights a fire under me, but it's like an hourglass, like if I'm at 50,000 grains of sand and I'm like, okay, I'm 32 now, how many grains of sand have dropped? 10,000. So I've got 40,000 left. Like, that's, really is like, okay, well now what do I want to do with that, and something that actually was a really impactful experience for me recently was, do you know who Tony Hsieh is?
Yeah, Zappos?
Yeah, he passed away.
Oh, he did? I did
last
not know.
week he died in a house fire. And, he was in a house fire and he died of smoke inhalation 9 days later. Like, he was in the hospital. And by all accounts, he had really been struggling for the last year. It sounded like Forbes wrote this really gratuitous article kind of like about like the tragic fall of Tony Hsieh. And I just, I think that's just so our media culture is like, someone can have this incredible lifetime of contribution to like the world of business and art and community development, and then the last year of their life, they go a little off the rails, and like that's their epitaph. I'm like, I'm so sick of that type of stuff. But I got to meet Tony Hsieh about a year and a half ago. He came to Arcosanti, and it was funny because I got all these calls over the course of a day. Like, someone was like, hey, do you guys have do you guys have any like VIP accommodations at Arcosanti? And I was like, VIP, like, gee, like, we've got the Sky Suite, it's kind of small and it was built in the 80s, but and I get another call that's like, hey, we like a double-decker bus, can it get down your road? And like, so I'm getting like all these calls, and I'm like, I finally asked someone who I'm on the phone with, I'm like, hey, who is coming? And he's like, all right, well, you can't tell anyone. It's Tony Hsieh. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. So I like immediately called up our CEOs that he could, at least get to meet him and, say hi. And he came in on this huge bus. And one of the coolest guys I've ever met, so down to earth, so sweet, very much a community-oriented thinker. And by all accounts, again, very troubled by this kind of like desire to like pursue a life of, doing the things that he did. And maybe actually another type of bypassing, which I think can also be a struggle for business owners, which is just pursuing this material idea of success and never filling out the other sort of parts of your life, with all the things that you need. So, but my experience with Tony was really spectacular. I'm like, we just hung out for a full day. He was a burner. We talked about Burning Man. So, and the thought I had is like, man, this guy, he was like 43, I think. Or maybe it was 43 or 46. But, my thought is like, wow, if I've got 13 more years, cut those grains of sand, in two thirds and leave a third there. And like, that's what you've got left. And that's such a, I think it's a potent way to think about, what do you really want to accomplish with this life? Like, what do you want to leave behind as a legacy?
On that note, I'd love to hear a little more about what it is that you're taking this next step for. You told me a little bit when I saw you the other week at Cosanti, but do you want to share a little bit more about what you're stepping into next?
Yeah, I think I like what you had said earlier about there being periods of time where you had to you plateaued and you had to take a step back. And I kind of feel like that's where I'm at right now, is I kind of hit this point where I felt very good and proficient at what I was doing. And as soon as I reached the top of the plateau, I like looked out and I was like, oh, wrong plateau, which is not to say that like, I think it all builds on itself. But, so one of the things that I have always wanted to do is write a book. I'm an avid reader. I love literature, and the excuse I always gave myself was like, well, some people are meant to read and some people are meant to write. But I love writing, and I've been ignoring that desire for a long time. And then at Burning Man, the year that you came, I went to a life coaching session. And
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking to this life coach, and he really just like kicked my ass because he said well, what are you doing with your life? And I was like, well, I'm doing this and this and this, and like supporting all these people in my life in all these ways. And one of the things that I've always been really proud of myself, or I take a lot of pride in, I should say, is like the ability to help people who I care about figure out how to get their dreams sort of accomplished, and I've always thought about that as a skill that I have, which is like, oh, you want to do that thing, like I can like help you do that. And so I told him that. He was like, what's your, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I think that's what I want to do. And he was like, you're telling me that what you want to do is do things for other people? And I was like, yeah. He's like, that's not a thing. Like, you can do that, but like, you need to figure out what it is that you want to do with your life, instead of spending all of your time and energy helping other people do what they want to do. And I went through like the 5 stages of grief after that thing. I was like angry, and I was in denial, and then I was like kind of had accepted it. Like, it's like, what does this mean? And he gave me a journal that it's one of my favorite things I own. It's a little, just like a cheapo journal. It says, unfuck your future self.
Oh, nice.
And so I made a commitment at that burn. I was like, okay, I'm going to start to work to like unfuck my future self here and, figure out what do I want to do. And so, yeah, I want to write a book to start. It's kind of the first thing I've ever decided that I want to do, and I'm, going to go do it. So yeah, that's exciting.
Dude, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Congratulations for choosing yourself and not just helping other people fulfill their dreams, but really taking back the power and saying and putting a stake in the ground and saying like, oh, my dreams, like my personal dreams are important too. Because I very much resonate with that too, because I'm one who, I love helping other people. I love making people's lives better. I love helping them to get what they want and where they want to go. But I've definitely gotten caught in a similar trap that I kind of heard you talk about, which it's not a bad thing, I don't think. I'm grateful for all the people I've helped and those experiences I've had. And it was just like...
It just can't be your only thing.
You can't put other people so beyond your own needs and desires that like you lose sight of them. Yeah. And that's kind of what I heard is like you're so busy helping other people, you forgot that there's certain hungers or desires inside of you personally that you weren't giving the attention because you were giving all that attention to others.
Well, and it builds resentment eventually is what it does. And that was the pattern I found myself in, was like I would like help people and and then I would feel resentful later. And I was like, why do I feel that way? Like it had nothing to do with them. It had to do with like this little ember of an idea that was inside of me that I just wasn't blowing any air on. And so that's what it feels like right now. It's like, okay, like I found the ember. I don't know what it is, but like I need to blow on that for a little while. And, it feels good. It feels like breaking out of a pattern that, I've been stuck in for a long time. And one that, again, like I'm not ashamed of anything I've accomplished to this day. Like I've done a lot of really cool stuff, but it's like that's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So yeah. And the resentment thing, I was just like, oh, that's a terrible, why you resentment is just like one of the worst, I think, feelings you can have as a human.
I've definitely went through periods of deep resentment towards my business, and even projecting that on some of the people who've worked with me in my business, because I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't I felt like I was sacrificing so much for others that I started to resent them and resent the business because there was pieces of me.
And they never asked you to do that.
No, they didn't. Right. That's the crazy part. It's like, you did this to yourself. It's definitely been a very humbling experience, but ultimately very valuable. And I'm just like super stoked that you're taking that leap of faith and being courageous enough to want to fan that flame a bit more and just see, like you said, see what it is and what comes of that. It just feels really, really good to hear you speak, because I know and have witnessed and have talked to other people like how much great work you've done at Arcosanti, and how much of a positive impact that you are leaving on that place. And everyone I've talked to has nothing but great things to say about you and the work that you've done there. And I think that is so admirable and valuable, and you've truly helped and served a lot of people, you know, and I very much appreciate and acknowledge you for choosing to set some personal boundaries and shifting how you're showing up, so that you don't, years down the road, continue to build that resentment and have regrets. You know, like, it's great that you helped all these people, and I'm sure they're genuinely appreciative, and you know, if your cup is left empty, then what was that really worth? You know, it almost feels like, that's how I felt, at least. I'll speak for myself, of like, I got to the point where I kept emptying my own cup so much that even the people I helped, it didn't seem as helpful, or there was just something significant missing there, and it actually limited my ability to even help them. You know, because I kept emptying my own cup and giving everything away to other people that I didn't have much left for myself, just enough to survive and keep moving forward. But the new model I'm now working from is, how do I keep my cup full and give from my overflow, which has been a game changer for me. I've really been leaning into that the last 6 months to a year, I would say, especially, and total game changer, because now I'm learning I can take care of myself and continue to feed the personal dreams and desires I have, and I can actually show up and better serve other people to do the same. Because it's like, I'm almost a bit of a hypocrite if I'm telling other people to like, follow your dreams, do what you want, I'll help you get there, if I'm not really doing that for myself. You know, I can only lead someone, I can only help someone as much as I've helped myself. I can only lead them as far as I've gone myself, you know, and that's, you know, I see that in my business. I see that now in my coaching. I just see that in life in general. It's like, you can only bring someone so far if you haven't done that thing yourself that you're trying to help them with. So I just, super respect you and appreciate the path you're on, and I'm excited for you to dive into this next phase. It's really awesome.
Thank you. What I think what you're saying, that also, and it doesn't surprise me that like you've also had that experience. I'm like, well, you know, two Pisces, two like very emotional men moving through, you know, a world of like business and, you know, all the things that you have to do, and wanting to like make an impact on the world. I've recently been seeing this person, and she's a therapist, which is a fascinating experience. Like, you know, I like, cause she, you know, she thinks so much about why people think the way they think. And so one of the ways that she challenged me originally on this was, and one of the ways that I think I've grown is, you know, she issued me a challenge to always be exploring the why underneath the why. So like, why help people? Well, because helping people is good. But like, what's underneath that? You know, and I think what I realized was what was underneath that was like, why help other people achieve their dreams? Because I was afraid I wouldn't achieve mine. Like, if I put myself out there, then I was going to be disappointed and I was going to fail, you know? And that might be true. Like, I might, you know, just write a really god-awful book, you know? But that's not a reason to not try, you know? And so, I think that that's maybe something that even like you can take into business, you can take it into life. It's like, I'm constantly asking myself now, what is the why under the why? You know, maybe there's a third or fourth level of that's like, that I'm just not at. It's just turtles all the way down, you know?
Always more layers.
There's always more layers. You're always peeling it back. And I do, you know, I know we're probably way over time now.
We can wrap up here pretty soon.
Well, something I do want to acknowledge before we wrap up is like meeting people like you is what helped me, because living at Arcosanti and doing the job I did there, which was like by and large, you know, relationship building for the site, and finding us like the people and the partners and the, you know, the clients who are going to help us continue to like steward that site in a, you know, a really, I think, holistic way. And I never wanted to work with people who, you know, I didn't want to work with the big, you know, people who do the thing. Like, I wanted to work with like the people in the community. And I think of Freak Brothers as like a community sort of staple for me, at least, because it's so present in my community. And so meeting people like you and like all the other people I've met through that space who are entrepreneurs or artists or writers, just people, travelers who are doing their dream and, succeeding, failing, having a great time, like having a really bad time. It was like I would watch these people pass through and I'd be like, wow, that seems really cool. And then after a while I was like, oh wow, I've got to go do that. But it was because of meeting people like you. So
yeah, it kind of ties back to something you said early on in the conversation around leaving your comfort zone. It's almost like at some point it sounded like it was more safe to try to help other people get to where they wanted to go rather than taking the risk and really putting yourself out there and potentially failing and falling on your face. But it's like you're doing it and you have the courage to do that, and that's super inspiring. And the last thing I heard in that was you had enough models and examples of people who were doing that, that it slowly helped you to build the courage and be inspired enough to then take that leap for yourself. But it's like if we don't have those models or examples, it's so much easier to just get stuck in that fear and just to stay there and to not make that choice to change, and you just stay in that comfort zone. So that's such a blessing that to be in a space like you were in and meet such incredible people, and it's really great to hear that over time that really affected you and that inspired you enough to make the shift that you're making right now.
Yeah, in a very real way, you accomplished your mission, Nathan Corey of Freak Brothers, because like you inspired another person to like go do, you were a part of a tapestry of people who did that. But so good job.
Well, thank you. That's all I can really hope for. So I appreciate that reflection.
Yeah, when I sell my first couple books, I'll send you a check as like a consultant.
No, just come celebrate with me. I'll buy you a pizza.
I will. That sounds great.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on, Tim. It was really great having you here.
Yeah.
Best of luck on the move. Enjoy the train ride, and look forward to staying connected with you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been really fun, Nathan. I appreciate the conversation, and keep on dough roganing.